Good morning and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2.
And welcome back to Morning Magazine, everyone, for this June 17th, 2020, 10:32 on the clock. And you have your host, James J. Malouf here. We are joined by our good friend Kevin at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Appreciate him being with us. And in studio, we have new 2020 radio broadcaster and director of media relations for your Wisconsin Rapids Rafters, Shaemus Kreider. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, James. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. First off, it is not fair that you have a better radio voice than me. That is not cool, man. You're too young to have that voice.
That's what people tell me, and I'm really happy to be blessed with those pipes. My whole family are singers, actually. My brother's an opera singer. Before COVID hit, he was actually going to be in San Diego with San Diego Opera. So I can't really sing very well, honestly, but I have a good voice for just talking, so that works.
You found your niche, it sounds like.
Yeah, I did.
You know, maybe you're not going to be able to do Pavarotti or anything, but you at least get, you got to get a good gig here.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the cool things that the Rafters do every year is bring in a new announcer and kind of give them a break, a chance to kind of pad their resume, get some experience, and these sort of things. What I'd like to do before we go too far ahead, Shaemus, is find out a little bit about you, to get a little backstory on you and your origin story, if you will.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Traverse City, Michigan, just across Lake Michigan, so I'm a Midwest boy. But when I was 12, our family packed up and moved out to Seattle, Washington, actually, Bainbridge Island, for anyone who's familiar with the states. So just across the water on an island. So it was an interesting place to go to middle and high school. But really the Midwest is home for me. So then after I got some broadcast experience, I've always wanted to be a broadcaster. So I did some stuff in high school with a local radio station, not unlike this one. So then I was looking around the Midwest for schools, and I found Ball State University in Indiana, of all places, a state where I really have never been.
Sure.
It's kind of a lot of cornfields.
Yeah.
But radio waves, I think, go a little farther there, maybe, because it's so flat. I went to Ball State, or go to Ball State currently, so I'll be entering my senior year this year. And I've gotten a lot of experience there. And that's where I met Mick Tidrow, who was the broadcaster here back in 2017.
Right.
He was the Northwoods League Broadcaster of the Year. He just graduated with his master's, so he was our graduate assistant for 2 years. Great mentor, very, very, very nice guy. Everyone loves Mick, and so Mick really led me to the Northwoods League. Jaron Matheny, who's the broadcaster in Green Bay, also was the broadcaster of the league last year.
And he's broadcasting hotbed right there.
Yeah, we do. He's my roommate. So
nice.
So yeah, we'll have some fun this year broadcasting side by side, one for Green Bay, one for Wisconsin Rapids.
First off, congratulations on going into your senior year. That's fantastic, man. I wish you the best there. And a great university in Ball State, especially when it comes to what you're doing for a living. When it comes to communications, anybody who knows their history or knows a little bit about that university, a lot of great people to come out of there when it comes to media relations and that sort of thing. So you're at a good school for that.
And I think I'm legally obligated to say David Letterman went to Ball State.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up.
Yeah, you just have to you have to put that into every conversation that Ball State is in.
And just even going a little bit further, we can't talk about Indiana and not mention David Letterman. We have to actually mention it's a legal obligation now. It actually is. But and we're kind of touching on that a little bit. And you said that you had always wanted to be a radio announcer. Now, for me, I was 7 years old and realized I wanted to be an actor. And not everybody has that, where they find what they want to do, their niche and everything early on in their life. It sounds like you kind of had that.
Yeah, I kind of had that. I've never been very athletic, honestly. Maybe it's because my vision's terrible, but baseball especially. I love baseball, but I am terrible at baseball. So from a young age, I realized, okay, I'm not going to play this sport, so how can I be involved? I was always that kid, I can remember in elementary school in Traverse City, I was broadcasting those soccer games that we were just playing at recess. And so from there, I just always kind of wanted to. And luckily enough, I think I'm driven enough to be able to scout out those opportunities. I found our little local radio station, and literally I walked in the door just kind of cold calling them in a way and said, hey, how can I broadcast our sporting events? and they gave me the equipment. They were so accommodating, and I got all the bad broadcasting out of the way early.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
voice was not as good then, for sure. Yeah, and that led me to kind of where I am now.
When it comes to this business and being in radio and everything, you have to be willing to hustle. You have to be willing to sell yourself. It was one of the earlier things that I had to learn that it was not being a very confident person, not being very good at selling myself. I had to learn I got to get better at that. We all do. It's we're all kind of a brand nowadays and stuff,
yeah.
and it's something that you have to believe in if you want anybody else to believe in. But one of the interesting things I found about looking at your backstory and everything is that some of the different sports you have covered already.
Oh, yeah.
You've kind of run a gamut here. Can you kind of let us know about some of those things that you've done? Like, what was the first place? You kind of touched on it a little bit with the soccer there, but
Yeah, so one of the crazy things about going to Ball State and a Division I college is you have all these sports, and as a part of the athletic department, like you have to cover all those sports. And so as a freshman, since all these seniors are doing all the football games, you have to find a niche to get broadcasting experience. So I think my first broadcast at Ball State was field hockey.
nice.
And I don't really want to go over the rules of field hockey because I'm not sure I remember them at this point.
Sure.
Because that is a weird sport.
Yeah.
But yeah, that broadcasting sports that you don't exactly know is a good way to just be uncomfortable and learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's how you become a good broadcaster, because I guarantee you, even the Jim Nances of the world, they're not comfortable all the time in the air, but they sure sound like it.
It's so interesting you bring that up because early on in this business, one of the people that I looked to was Steve Stone, and then looking at a guy like Vin Scully, who I think is the greatest I've ever heard doing announcing.
Best of all time.
Easily. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about doing a little homework on him is that he get nervous all the time. He would have all kinds of times where he was uncomfortable and unsure of himself and things like that, even late in his career. Yeah. And I think that being vulnerable on the air is something that if you embrace it, the audience embraces it with you. Because if you try to be fake or if you try not to be yourself necessarily, the audience eats you alive. So you got to find this kind of version of yourself that you're comfortable being on air and being vulnerable with. And being able to do that, I imagine that doing sports you're not that familiar with helps a little bit with that process.
It really does. And you just have to do so much more research for that. It really teaches you how to research, because that's the other part of broadcasting. You have to know these players front and back. You have to know their hands. You have to know their stances. You got to know everything about them. So, and that's something you have to learn.
Yeah.
And that's something that I guess field hockey, you learn it that way too, because man, that's you're up in the press box. That's a huge field. They play on about, I think it's a football size field, maybe a little larger. And so, yeah, just doing the soccers of the world, you get to just learn by that experience.
Shaemus Kreider, new radio broadcaster for your Wisconsin Rapids Rafters, join us along with our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. And when it comes to people who, especially you're a young guy, so when it comes to your influences, I thought it'd be kind of fun to hear some of the people that have influenced you and, not only made you want to get into this business, but that you've learned from and continue to learn from.
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan again, and I was listening to Mario Mpemba on the TV broadcast of the Tigers. Unfortunately, he's not there anymore. But though that broadcast crew was amazing for many years. And then when I was out in Washington, Aaron Goldsmith actually took over for Dave Niehaus, and he kind of slid into the second broadcaster role with the Mariners. And he was the first guy who was kind of young and new in the business that I realized, oh, wow, he's in his 20s, and he just got a big league job with the Mariners. I can maybe do this. It's not just an old boys club where you have to wait around for 30 years. And he is an amazing broadcaster in his own right. He's been on Fox many times, and hopefully the Mariners will be good enough to keep him in the future. But Joe Davis is another one that comes to mind, the replacement for Vin Scully out in L.A. He's from Michigan. So he's
That's right.
And he went
I
to
forgot that.
I think he went to Beloit, if I remember right.
Yeah, he's got some Wisconsin ties.
Yeah, he does
I
have
know,
some Wisconsin ties. So, and he's an amazing broadcaster.
Yeah.
He'll be around for for probably the next 50 years. He's kind of the next Vin Scully out there.
I can't imagine taking over for that role of Vin Scully, but if you got to have somebody to do it, they found the perfect guy. It just worked out that way.
Yeah.
And those are some really cool influences right there. I got to tell you, man. It's encouraging to hear that stuff, not just for you yourself, but just your generation, and knowing that you guys see these people and hear these voices. You also bring up a really interesting point, and it's something that I love to give the Rafters credit for. The Rafters, there are 1,000 announcers out there that, and they could bring in somebody with 20, 30 years of experience and that sort of thing, or have a hometown announcer and have somebody every year you count on hearing Bob Smith or what have you and stuff. I give them so much credit for doing something like this with their sport. The announcer gig is one we kind of take lightly, but is so vital to this game of baseball. It's one of those things when we've all heard bad announcing and know what that's like and how much that can drag a game out and everything. So what the Rafters do, they're smart about this. They do their homework. They bring in good people. And at the same time, they're able to give somebody an opportunity, a chance to, like we touched on early on, get not only adding to your resume, but you're adding to your experience. So it's cool to kind of hear that touch there that you made to that, because usually radio broadcasting, especially baseball, was a old guy sport, where a sport where you had to pay your dues. You had to certainly have a good 10, if not 20 years experience before you got a gig like this.
Yeah. And this is a leg up. The Northwoods League is amazing. Wisconsin Rapids is amazing because you get this experience. We have usually over 70 games to do. This year will be more like 54, but still 54 games this summer is going to mean millions to anyone in the Northwoods League going forward in broadcasting, because there are not many places that will give a college student this many broadcasting reps. And reps is really the name of the game. You just need reps and the ability to get better, because you'll get better if you have it inside of you. You can be one of the best out there, and that's one of my goals.
Right on. Yeah, and you've got a great launching point here, and you've already kind of built a good base to build on, to grow that, to turn into that and everything. And like so many of the voices we've had on the air with us here from the Rafters, looking so forward to what you got going ahead. But we can't get there yet because we've got a season to cover here
yes,
first.
We do.
We're going to do that when we come back from break. We're going to talk about the schedule and some of the great things that are going on with your Wisconsin Rapids Rafters. With your new Rafter, the voice of the Rafters, Shaemus Kreider here, along with our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media on AM 1320 WFHR's Morning Magazine. 77 in Stevens Point, 75 in Marshfield and Wausau, and 78 here in Wisconsin Rapids, where tucked away in the West Side Industrial Park, you have the Morning Magazine on your radio waves. And we are joined by our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Again, a big shout out to Kevin and the gang over there. And we have Shaemus Kreider in with us, your 2020 radio broadcaster and director of media relations to the Wisconsin Rapids Rafters. And Shaemus, we focus on the announcing part of things, but one of the things we've been able to notice more with social media, and especially if you follow the Rafters on Instagram and Facebook, and if you don't, why don't you? I encourage you to do it right now. We'll go ahead and wait. Go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. We'll pause the interview. Now, while they're doing that, media relations is another part of this game, and another part of this thing where I don't know. When you're dreaming of being a broadcaster and you're training for it and everything, if that's really something you even think about, but it's one of these added parts of the job now that we're seeing more and more, not just with the Rafters, but with all, way up top even, that is a part of it. So how for you has that gone?
It's gone well. That's a reason you go to college for sure too, because you can get as many reps, but you need to know the ins and outs of the media relations part. And so that's something that definitely I've had to learn over my few years, I guess. I'm only 20, but
yeah, I was gonna say,
but it's just about relating with people and getting the word out basically to the community. Luckily I'm part of the youthful generation, so I know all these social media tricks and all that. So yeah, it's really great to also be with a front office that knows how to do media relations work as well. So it's not just a one-man show. We're a team. We have a lot of interns on that as well. So as much as I'm the media relations intern, we have a lot going on behind the scenes that's not just me, which is good. Shout out Meg Thompson, who is definitely not listening to this. They're interning and they're like painting fences right now at the ballpark. But that we have a big team, and today we're starting out talking to players and getting some good videos out to the public.
Very interesting, and I appreciate that insight and a little behind the curtain look kind of there too. And I appreciate that you said that too, because I'll tell you, I've worked in this industry and I've worked at a number like minor league team around a number of minor league teams and things like that. I have never been around a front office as smart and as tapped to their community and media relations and social media and all this stuff, as well as putting a great product on the field. I mean, we have a nice roster, especially looking at this team this year.
Yeah, this roster is going to be very impressive. Once we release the full, we've been releasing it in chunks this year as players come in, but once we get that full roster out there, man, it is just an insight behind the curtain again. It is about 90% Division I players with Division I experience, which is a lot better than what we usually have. We usually have great players come here, but with the cancellation of the Cape Cod League season, we have all those Cape Cod League players looking for places to play, and the Northwoods League is widely viewed as the second best league. So now this is the best league.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin Rapids fans are going to be pretty impressed with the baseball they see. We're going to have 90 miles an hour on the radar gun most nights.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really high level, and I would expect one or two or maybe even more of these guys are going to get high minor league experience, maybe even make it to the majors.
It's not far-fetched at all, especially with we were talking in the break there and everything about what Major League Baseball has done with their minor league system, cutting a lot of the payroll, cutting a lot of the players, cutting teams. These kids are going to need somewhere to play, and in Northwoods leagues and leagues like this are going to benefit from it, and especially the fans. The fans are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this thing, because we're going to see some real talent out there. And again, like you mentioned, we've been very fortunate around here. We've had a championship. We've had some good teams. And it is taking nothing away from the great talent that we've had around here already. It's just looking forward. Hey, we're going to have some really impressive talent around here. It's going to be fun. And kind of diving into this league and this new season and the new changes and everything. It's a whole new ball game, and pun intended. It is what we're dealing with now is a pod situation, and maybe I'll let you kind of tell people about this a little bit.
So the Northwoods League has kind of dealt with different states having different restrictions, so they've had to come back in a pod format. With different places coming back at different times. So Bismarck just got underway this week, just 2 days ago. So they were able to get their season going a little earlier because they're up even farther in the middle of nowhere up there. Yeah. So yeah, they were able to get going. But the pod here is the largest pod of them all because Wisconsin is kind of the center of the Northwoods League. So we have a lot of teams around here. So we are one of 6 teams that will be playing each other, which is really good. There will be a lot of variety, unlike some of those other pods, like Bismarck's 3 teams. So you're going to be, they'll only be seeing the same players over and over and over again. And that would be pretty rough, especially, broadcasting and from a fan perspective, it would get pretty old pretty quickly. But here we're going to have a rotating cast. Green Bay Booyah will be here. That will be the home opener on July 2nd. And then July 4th, it'll be the Wisconsin Woodchucks from Wausau. Coming into town, and then I believe after that, the 5th is lacrosse.
Yes.
And then, so lacrosse will be new to Wisconsin Rapids Rafters fans a bit because they're usually in the West, and just due to how it shook out this year, they'll be with us in the pod. Then Rockford's also there. That will be a longer trip, so those will be 2-game series usually, and then Fond du Lac's also with us there. So. Yeah, that's our pod. So those are the teams that will be vying for the pod championship. I guess that's what we'll call it.
It's going to be very interesting and going to be really exciting too, I think, because while it's not what we're used to, it's not what maybe we were looking forward to, or that it's something new and different, and that can be really exciting. And maybe more than anything else, unlike Major League Baseball, the Northwoods League got their stuff together, and they're able to actually go on the ball field and do this. And I think that all of us are in the same boat where we're all appreciative of that. When it comes to covering these games and covering this league now, you came in with a bit of a game plan, I'm sure, and now the game has changed.
Yep.
So how have you adapted to that?
Man, it's been just kind of day by day, just going by, okay, here's the new restrictions and what we have to do. Socially distancing in the ballpark will certainly be different once we get there. Our fans will be a little few and far between this year. We're going to be reducing our capacity a little bit like every other stadium. But yeah, you just have to take it day by day. Right now, it's kind of the same. Players have come actually a little earlier than usual because they're not coming off a college season. So for me, it's almost a little easier. I get more time
Sure.
with the players, which is sure great. But yeah, it's just been playing it by ear. For a while there, we weren't even sure if we were going to have a season. So I was just sitting at home doing as much prep as I could, but you can only do so much when you're not in the ballpark.
Yeah, but it is good to hear that you were doing that, and it is a nice note to a lot of our younger listeners out there looking to not only get into this industry or any other industry, that do what you can. You have time on your hands, and maybe you can't do certain things, but you can always prep. You can always prepare and work to get better. And the way you approach a job. One of the things that I love so much about Wisconsin Rapids Community Media and so many of the people that I get to work with here, and I'm getting a feel from you about is we're in a rural area. We're in a small town in Wisconsin Rapids in the middle of Wisconsin. We all understand that. But we don't treat our jobs that way.
Nope.
Every one of us treats our job like we are in L.A., we are in New York, we are or something like that. We have a million listeners, million followers, whatever. We treat our jobs that way for our listeners, for our audience, because they deserve that. And it makes the job that much more fun to do to me, but also I think rewarding in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I'm going to be well known around the community, hopefully. I mean,
Sure.
we'll be tuning in for these broadcasts. Hopefully, tune in. It should be, I think, 6:05 is our start times this year, or 6:35.
Yes. The first handful of games 6:35,
Okay,
otherwise
yeah,
6:05.
6:35.
Yeah.
So yeah, and our pregame show will start 5 minutes before then. And so again, first home game on July 2nd. So I'm really excited for that one.
You're a handsome kid with a great voice, but you got that name, Shaemus. That's good.
Everyone loves it. Everyone
it's a
loves
great
it.
name. Now I imagine growing up you didn't.
Yeah,
or at least sometimes you didn't.
Yeah,
My name's James and I didn't like it, so I gotta imagine that it was tough sometimes with Shaemus. But that's a great name, man.
Everyone always tells me that, and I just have to kind of smile and nod, I guess, because I was born with it. I don't know. Yeah, you just have to.
I feel like you owe, certainly we all owe our parents a lot of gratitude and appreciation and everything. You in particular owe your parents that name because they gave you a radio broadcaster name, even though they didn't know that's what you were going to grow up to be or what you wanted to be. But you just grew into your name very much, and that is a radio broadcaster name. The first time I read it, I'm like, oh, the Rafters brought in somebody with like 20 years experience or something like that because you got one of those names, man. When we're speaking about the season and we're talking about this team, what are some of the things that you are looking forward to?
I'm just looking forward to baseball.
Right on.
I love the
Yeah.
sport. I love baseball. It's as American as they say apple pie and Chevrolet. So I love baseball, and I'm really happy to have it there. Major League Baseball might not get off the ground this year, so if the Rafters are all we have, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this a little bit before. It sounds like baseball is your go-to. That's your favorite sport.
Yeah, completely. I love the pace of baseball. Some people don't. It's too slow for some people, but when you have a good broadcaster there, you can talk about a lot of different things and get deeper into the stories than you can when broadcasting baseball on the radio. Or broadcasting basketball on the radio. So that's why baseball is my go-to.
We mentioned the great Vin Scully, of course, but we can't be in this state and not mention the legend Bob Uecker.
Oh, I love him. He's so great.
Anybody who, even if you don't like baseball, you enjoy listening to Bob Uecker. I literally know at least a couple of people who don't necessarily like baseball, don't even have a team that they follow, but they love listening to Uecker. He is one of the prime examples of what you're talking about there. Mm-hmm. You got a slow game. You got a game that maybe it's dragging or something like that, like every once in a while baseball has.
Yeah.
It is on that announcer to be able to carry that, and the good ones are so good are able to do that, and that's really cool that you see that you understand that part of the bit, because for a lot of people, especially talking to announcers that are just getting started, that's something that they learn like baptism by fire kind of thing, like in the middle of a game, and all of a sudden it's like dead air or something like that, or you're hearing crickets and stuff like, oh, I got to talk, I got to fill the time.
Oh yeah,
you know that going into it. That is interesting, and it's a really that shows how you care about the business.
Something I've had to learn, and certainly those broadcasts from Bainbridge High School and on Bainbridge Island, Washington, there was a lot more dead air in those.
Right on. Yeah, I can relate to that. So we got about a minute or two left. What is one of the weirder or tougher announcing gigs that you've had or games that you've had?
Let's see. I would say I have to go back to field hockey. That was weird. But actually, no, I'll go with the last one before COVID, actually. We went with Ball State women's basketball to the MAC tournament in Cleveland. And so we had to broadcast that game without fans because that was right when everything was shutting down, but it wasn't shut down yet. So all we had were friends and family in the crowd, and Ball State to Cleveland's like a 5-hour drive. So none of those Ball State fans were making that drive for a first round game.
Right.
So yeah, it was odd to broadcast in a huge NBA stadium without fans, and luckily enough, we'll have fans in the ballpark this year.
Yeah.
So I'll have them to back me up this year.
And we've got your back, and we're looking forward to not only hearing you this season, but talking with you again. We'll have you on much more. We have Meet Your Rafters coming up and things like that. So get used to this place. You're going to be around quite a bit. But we are really looking forward to hearing from you, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Roll Rats.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Shaemus. We appreciate you. Again, a big thank you to Shaemus Kreider for joining us, your new radio broadcaster for your Wisconsin Rapids Rafters. A big shout out to Kevin and their friends over at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. And again, we want to thank our new mayor, Shane Blazer, for joining us as well. More Morning Magazine for you tomorrow right here on AM 1320 WFHR.